Ready? Ready? Okay. At first, I would like to thank all my dear friends that are here actually, that are staying, almost all of them are staying at home, and some of us are on work. So thank you very much for being here with us and to give us a chance to talk about the greatest shock that economy has seen for last, everyone is saying for the last, I don't know, 100 years or so. And we are here to discuss about the Balkan real estate and investment impact of COVID-19. We'll go through the economic impact, and then later on, we will focus on real estate. At first, my dear friends that are here with us are coming from the region. From Slovenia, we do have Maja. She is working as a director in KF Finance. And then we do have a Filip, who is a Colliers International Director in Croatia, as well from Montenegro Colliers International Director, Milovan. Maho Taso worked in the greatest agency in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well, doing the valuations. And we do have a banking professional surgeon from Erste Group in Serbia. So we are covering all the region, and we do have a chance to express our opinion about the impact. So our goal is, in this 1 hour session, is to present the questions we deem important, not only because they are important because of the current crisis, but also because we believe these questions will be really important when the crisis is over. So my dear friends will help me out to run real quick through all the impacts and what have we seen so far that might be challenging at this moment and in the future. I have recognized 5 main risk categories that are shaking economy, banks, investors, valuers, and everyone that has interest in operating and working in real estate sector. Those 5 risks, I can say the first of one is a country risk. Example, like a fundamental macroeconomic, demographic, and political aspect. The second one should be a property market risk. Is it in a yield, a rental development, vacancy risk, or any other risk? So we do have a financial risk. Is it an interest rate risk, a debt available risk, or like investor risk? The fourth one is a structural risk. Is it a legal or fiscal aspect? And the fifth one is a management risk, track record of the management. So we will talk about the impact, about the risk, and about that, what will happen, what is happening at this moment, and what can we assume that might happen in the near future. So as we said, the focus will be real estate markets, investment markets, trends and expectation on real estate market, new trends and changes, and real estate in post-COVID time. As you all know, the best thing in life are free. So at this moment, you were all thinking like, yeah, it might be love, but no, it's acknowledged. So we are giving a free experience for great experts from the region. So you guys help me out on this one and let us start. So for the first questions, as we are all gentlemen, we will give hand to Maja to start this great conversation and to open our Balkan real estate webinar. Maja, please help us out on this first question. And what do you think actually? Please share with us what happened in Slovenia. What is the impact of this COVID-19 in economy, in the real estate sector, and does already started the recovery, or what is actually happening at this moment?
Thank you for the word. Thank you for being such nice gentlemen, and hello also to all of our listeners. Basically, at this point, talking about the impact on the economy or the real estate market, I think it's still too soon, because we are still dealing with putting down the fire. And I believe that in the next few months, we'll be able to see just to what extent the fire caused the damages on the different segments of the economy and also the real estate market. But if we go through the situation where Slovenia right now is in terms of the economy, to have a luck in the most unfortunate time is that we entered into this crisis with very good macroeconomic indicators. That means, that the unemployment rate is very low. Basically, that it's the lowest one in euro area. The financial sector is in a very good shape, and also the corporate and household indebtedness is below the average. So basically, the banks have good capital adequacy and a sound liquid position. Now, having said all of that, of course, this all indicators will deteriorate during the crisis that we are seeing right now, and it all depends on how long all of this will last. If we're looking from the forecasts that we are seeing also from the International Monetary Fund, is that basically for this year, Slovenia will have 6 to 8% downturn in the GDP, while the recovery should come back in the next year, 2021. To what extent, it is still, I believe, too early to say. But we are seeing that, of course, especially because of the situation that we are right now, and also with good macroeconomic indicators, that the government is trying to support the crisis and support the different segments of the economy. Whether these regulations will be enough, whether they will be enough of a boost for the months to come, in my opinion, it's still too early to say.
Yeah, we will talk about that shortly. And about the economic shock in Croatia, it might be even greater than in Slovenia, because Croatia is known by the greatest touristic attraction for all of the world. So Philip, help us out in that one, please.
Well, when we talking about the effects on the economy, I think we should look this through two perspectives. One from a short-term basis, basically what is happening now and maybe next 2 to 3 months, and what will happen in some mid to long term, meaning by the end of the year and in the following years. So for the first part, I think it is the most important, of course, the grounds which economy had before this crisis. More or less, everyone was in an upside cycle. Some countries were performing better, some were behind them. And of course, there are some specifics, for example, like in Croatia, where GDP is highly dependent on the tourism sector. We are talking about figures from 12 to 18% of the overall GDP is directly or indirectly related to the tourism sector. So it's no question that it will have then a very strong impact on the performance of the national economy in our country. I think what is, and now in that sense, the most important thing now is the strong and effective response from the governments in this really unique, I think, once in at least our lifetimes situation. So how strong and how good will government, our and others, of course, react? This doesn't only mean react locally, but also coordinate on a upper scale, meaning on the level of European Union and also on the level of the world, because we definitely have to show now to be united and to act together, because this might be a way out of this. On the second is the longer perspective, and this will be directly correlated to the effects on the health, basically directly related to the coronavirus. So whether we are talking about that coronavirus will end, we will get a herd immunity or not, we will have the vaccines, we can get one shot and then no problem for corona for the rest of the life, or maybe it will be just like for a flu, that every year you will get a shot and you might get sick and might not. So there is also something which is China now facing, the second wave. So lots of uncertainties. which is now the key word in the economy, a very strong and big uncertainty what and when is going on. In this sense, the consequences and how will economy look like in closer future is still under lots of question mark. I think then from economic perspective, I think very important thing is there to mention. We all learn what means flattening the curve now, not to for the health system, but it's also very important for the economy. Flattening the curve in the economy, meaning that not all companies will bankrupt and shut down instantly, because many of them will. Try to keep them alive as best as possible. Try to lower the effects of the public sector, which burdens the national budgets. At least those who are not giving the right service back. I'm not talking about health and education and security, for example, but more like administration and things which can be now done. We learn lots of things that can be now done by email or from home, and not from a huge and ineffective public sector. Yeah, in this sense, I really don't trust in some V-shape recovery, so that we will just plug in a month or two and everything will get back to normal. I think the recovery will be much slower. But did we hit the bottom, or we will dance a bit more towards it? I think it's still open. So I of course hope for us that we are picking up now slowly and seeing the better times. But until all certainties are clear, or at least some path is more there to be more likely, then we will have a better understanding of how it will look like.
Thank you, Philip. Now we just heard how is that in European Union, and what can we expect how that will affect us in non-European countries. Milovan, please help us out, because you seem to have the same problems like Croatia. So please.
I thought that we are a European country.
We are all in Europe, yes, but on paper, not.
So
almost.
Taking into consideration, are we part of Europe or we are out of Europe? This is definitely globally new situation. And this, I can call it adversity, definitely had first and strongest impact on health, and these multiplicative effects are caused on economy. Also, it will have strong social effect. We are seeing what is happening, and globally, only in the United States, we have more than 20 million unemployment rate increase. And it will definitely also maybe change the politics system. In Montenegro, like everywhere globally, the real sector is locked down. So we have economy is locked down globally. Only supermarkets, pharmacies, and some kid stores, specialized kid stores, are working normally. And the impact on real sector is huge. I agree with our colleagues that we can measure this on a short term and on a long term. And I strongly believe that from 1st of June, the system will start to work also regionally. We strongly believe that in Montenegro, after 4th of May, these measures will be much more relaxed, and that till 2nd quarter of May, we will put the economy in function, because the situation in Montenegro is pretty similar like Croatia from the tourism perspective. We don't have diversified economy. Tourism has influence on our GDP of approximately 20-25%. So it is very crucial to open the system in June and to try to save part of the season. So the strongest months generally in Montenegro are July and August, and I believe that also our government is aware about that, and all stakeholders in the real sector, we are doing our best to put the economy on function. Of course, the health is the priority, but Montenegro is also had some fortunate situation, to call it like that. We were the last country in Europe who identified COVID. We have approximately 315 people who are infected, and also the percentage of death is the lowest in Europe. Our health system and government did a great job. So we were monitoring the situation globally and in Europe, and all measures that they did it in a very proper way. So I strongly believe that we will put our economy in function fast, and that the general effect on the real sector will not be so much negative. Beside the fact that MMF projected some decrease of -9% for our country, but these are just projections, and we will see what will happen. So this is the general picture about Montenegro. Hello, we cannot hear you, Uroš.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's for sure. Thank you, Milovan, because you do have the smallest number of confirmed cases. And let us see what is happening in Bosnia and Montenegro. Maho, please.
Hi.
Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Bosnia and Herzegovina, yeah. Like in Montenegro, officials reacted really fast, and basically the spread was tempered very, very quickly, and we saved many lives. So now, on the other side, officials basically didn't react at all yet on economy side. So what's happening now? They are preparing a special COVID-19 law, which should help on federal level, which should help businesses in a much broader part of economy. And on cantonal level, they are preparing some help for businesses that were locked down, basically that were forbidden to work under these circumstances. The thing is that these measures are most likely to come maybe a bit too late to some of businesses, because the reactions of business owners was pretty quick, especially, of course, in hotel sector and other sectors that are immediately affected by the crisis, and many, such as the rest of the region, and all the numbers you can see in US proportionally. I think it's probably the same in Bosnia, that many are filing for employee benefits now, unemployment benefits now, and people really do not know what to expect next, because the response was so slow. A very good example is the real estate industry, and although our sector is not forbidden at all, we are totally we have no chance to operate at all, because the courts, the municipalities, so basically all state businesses almost shut down or functioning on 10%, 5% level. Notaries are also doing the same. Companies are also, of course, working from home, and there is certainly no new inquiries. But even in those segments where you have some inquiries, like in weekend houses or family homes that are outside the city, because we had kind of a lockdown which prohibited older than 65 and younger than 18 to go outside at all. So families would like to have their children outside. So the most that could do it, they were actually inquiring now about possibility to buy something in these times, and you are not able to do anything, and we are not on this lockdown list either. So, and like real estate, there is many other industries that are in such position. So there is still, let's say, communication between businesses and governments, what to do and how to make this law in order to help more business or broader economy, not just those that were hit immediately in matter of forbidding their businesses.
Thank you, Majo. And now we do know that the most severe measures were made in Serbia. Serbia has the biggest impact of corona virus. It has like almost 7,000 people are influenced. And then let us hear how that looked like in Serbia. Srđan, please.
Thanks, Uroš. Well, I had to agree at first with your opinion that the opinion of the broader public that this is something that we encounter in as the first time in modern history, maybe even in human history, apart from fighting for lives for every day, and apart from the fact that we are struggling with the health systems worldwide, we are also encountering something that is not in human nature, and that's being that physical, I'm intentionally not saying social distance, but physical distance, not even with our broader circle of people, but with our family and loved ones. So apart from all these anxiety and all these uncertainties, as Philip mentioned, I believe that at the same time we have to think about the economy, we have to think about the jobs, and we have to think about the exit strategies, if I may say so. So as you mentioned, Serbia encountered this crisis, this pandemic, on an individual level, because if I may emphasize, there is no unified global response amid this pandemic and until now. So there is no unified medical response, there is no social response, there is no unified economic measures. So the response is on an individual country level. And for example, you mentioned EU countries. We have participants from Slovenia and Croatia. We don't even have a unified response on an EU level. So I believe in a period to come, this whole pandemic thing might also get a bit politicized and some more on a more broader level, with even increasing level of accusations, misbeliefs, and conspiracy theories between the governments, and that is not easy thing to predict how that could also affect further on. The recovery, not only in Serbia but broader, will be definitely dependent on the extent of this isolation and these restriction measures and closure of business, especially from the first one that we encounter in tourism and hospitality sector, and then afterwards mostly all other businesses that are not related to the necessity products from food and medical supplies. It will also depend on the duration of these measurements and how those measurements will affect, and whether this pandemic will return in waves, as we can hear in last couple of days, that we don't know how this pandemic will look like in autumn or winter time without vaccine, without immunization, whether these restrictions and measurements will come back again in winter or maybe even in autumn. And also it will depend on the fiscal and monetary police response, of course, from the individual countries. So there are predictions at the very beginning that it will be, you know, the economic recovery will be, as Philip also mentioned, V-curve recovery, which is not likely to happen, you know. So now we are on a beginning of thinking it might be U-turn or maybe WV turn if it's going to be in shapes in waves. So that's something that also depends how the governments will react and how the measures and, you know, will impact, of course, in this first period of time, but also whether there will be a space for other measures in the future period. Globally speaking, initial measures that we are seeing could be named as whatever it takes approach, you know. So do whatever it takes at this first initial wave of influence of pandemic, just to minimize the effects in these first days, especially for the businesses that are coping with liquidity and saving jobs at the very beginning. So the liquidity support, introducing moratoriums on credit lines for retail and corporate, initiation of increased asset purchase activities, you know, to support, to keep long-term bond yields low, just to have that sentiment from the behalf of investors and lenders as much as positive as it can be. You know, and so these are some broader measurements that we can see. But when you mention Serbia, I will just take it from the perspective of banking industry, from where I come from, and banking sector in Serbia. And I just have to mention that you know, along with the Ministry of Finance and National Bank, banking sector in Serbia really reacted promptly to this situation. And, you know, bearing in mind that what was the situation in 2008 with the global financial crisis and with the banks being at the center of point as the cause of what happened later, this time with this, you know, COVID-19 virus pandemic has caught up the banking sector in Serbia in most positive and stable moment, really. I have to, you know, go back to the March, prior to the March 2020 to notice that we were witnessing, you know, strong signals of such position in banking sector in Serbia. We saw several merger and acquisition activities in the market. We all remember the acquisition of Komercijalna Banka from behalf of Slovenian NLB Bank only 1 month prior to this pandemic. We saw strong support in country economic recovery from 2008 and later growth in recent years, with banking sector focusing on small and medium enterprises sector, and also pretty much partnering with major infrastructure and construction sites in the country, supporting sustainable energy source projects, and also supporting retail banking, especially when it's, because this panel is based on real estate, so especially you know, with the lowest mortgage interest rates and conditions of applying for mortgage in history of Serbia. So everything this, along with constant digitalization and constant improvement of e-channels of banking sector, this was how you know, this pandemic brought up the banking sector. From the March 2020, at the very beginning, National Bank lowered the reference rate from 1.75 to 1.5, you know, and introduced 30-day moratorium for both retail and corporate clients, just to support the liquidity of businesses. And banking sector in Serbia really promptly communicated to its clients and to the broader public on how to use e-channels, you know, to support keeping people safe, keeping people in their homes, but at the same time just to continue to do their operations. And, you know, apart from this, they managed to, over the night, to introduce a distance working conditions to their people and to try to keep people, employees safe, working from their homes with all the IT and all the safety challenges that we have to look upon when we are working at home in a banking sector. So it was really a challenging time. It was really something that the banking sector coped with a huge success here in Serbia. And along with that, starting from, I think, this Monday, the banking sector introduced, along with Ministry of Finance and along with the National Bank of Serbia, this package of, state guarantee scheme in total value of around 2 billion euro, 2.1 billion euro, to support further companies to overcome these liquidity issues by favorable credit lines. And also Serbia started from yesterday to easen up a little bit of their measures. Somebody mentioned that Serbia had most restrictive measures in the region, and yes, they are now a little bit going up, if I may say so. And we have to see in future period how will this, consumer confidence will bring back, and how those measure will further on be restricted or bringing up, and just to analyze the situation literally day by day and to see how it will affect further on.
Okay, thank you, Srđan. So we do know that we don't know much at this moment. Actually, it's only like, let us see, about more than 5, 6, 7 weeks of this COVID pandemic, and we were waiting for more than 4 weeks to get a response from our national economy and government to respond across the region. So just Srđan mentioned that Serbia got some measures to help out the economy and to recover. And probably the same should happen, or actually happened, in our region. So my next question will be how the economy and government responses across the region, and how have market reacted to those stimulus packages? Before that, we just heard in Germany, Adidas and all the other big companies, they just say that they would like to have some kind of moratorium of payments, and that can influence the whole chain of persons that are inside. So please, Maya, tell us, what is the response of your economy and government, and is it too early maybe to see how market reacted?
Well, the first responses from the government came quite fast after the lockdown that happened in the beginning of March, middle of March. But the aim of that first initial aid from the government was basically to hold on the number of employees. So basically to to maintain the unemployment rate at the level it is. And then, of course, with the benefits to the companies in terms of the employees and different arrangements for the employees that are either working from home or are on a waiting list. So basically, these are the first measurements that are being taken. As we speak now, basically, the government is preparing the second package of Corona law. But what we are missing for sure is that basically up till now, no one is going into the details of how to arrange the relationship between landlord and the tenants. The way you mentioned also what happened in Germany, this is of course happening the same in Slovenia, and I'm sure that in all other countries across all of the real estate segments. What is the right procedure to act in the relationship between the tenants who are being basically on the lockdown and the landlord who is of course depending on the revenue from the rentals. We are seeing the lack of governmental guidelines, not only in Slovenia, but in general. So basically the tenants and the landlords are basically being on their own negotiations. From sector to sector, these requests came differently. For example, the retail segment, retailers, of course, are demanding basically no free rent for the April, March, and also the beginning of May. And also, of course, in terms of the costs, then in the office segment is happening the same, decrease in the rental levels for the lockdown period. So basically, we do not, for the real estate market to function normally in the months to come, or at least to go back on the normal levels, we are expecting some guidelines also from the governmental policies, not just being structured into the economy recovery, but also in the real estate segment.
Yes, we are all familiar in the region that government they are not good with economy and otherwise. So there need to be more talking between each other. And let us hear, we heard that in Croatia, they do have a good government response. Philip, is that true?
Well, I won't bother you with more than 70 measures they implemented or preparing to further implement. The first response was poor and bad, definitely, but they consolidated and they are improving. I think that we are going into the right directions with the government response. We'll see how it will go further. The two keys, of course, it's to keep alive the real sector and make some adjustments on the fiscal side, meaning less taxes and less burdening the expenditure side of the budget. I think that in this situation, the key thing is that everyone, at least at start, we're looking at this as a liquidity problem. I would definitely disagree with that because it's not just the case, okay, I will have bad 2 or 3 months and just lend me some money and we'll pick up after that. Those 2-3 months which we lost or will be lost and might be even more will never be recovered. So those revenues are lost forever. So in this sense, for many companies, this will be a solvency issue. So the solution doesn't lie just only in lending the money and securing the loans even without any interest, but doing some stronger measures. So in this sense, there are routes from not doing anything, especially also from landlord and tenant side. There are lots of moratories, which are some partial solutions, I would say, and solutions for those companies who doesn't face strong problems in this crisis. And there are things which I think should happen, that everyone takes some loss, because otherwise there will be many of them who will not be able to sustain. We all lose in this situation. It's just the question how much and how deep. So whether it will be write-offs from the banks, whether it will be discounts on the lease agreements, however it will end up, I think it will be really case by case. But in general, I do believe that the volumes and the sizes which we had previously in terms of the revenues, of the primarily revenues, will shrinken, at least in mid to short term, and then from some new grounds, from some new normal, which will hopefully come soon, however it will look like. We will have then new grounds to build upon and to reach whatever the same rental levels, the same revenues from the companies, or higher, or in some cases, of course, lower.
Thank you. And now, Milovan, we do know that you have the smallest number of infected. That seems that with the right response of economy and government, we might go actually on the sea this year. So how is that over there? And what do you think? Is that going to be a straight line really soon? And would you go on the things that you are familiar with? And we do know that Balkan people like to socialize. All of us in the region like socialization, cafes, restaurants, hotels, and everything. We'll talk later on that impact of real estate. But at first, please, what is the response?
So you're totally right. We have very low number of infected people, but we reacted in a very serious way, and our government created immediately national coordination body with different departments in charge for different sectors. But generally, economy is locked down like everywhere in the world. So beside the fact that we have very small number of infected people, the effects on the economy will be definitely large. So like every country, also Montenegro, in accordance with their situation, they made some economical and fiscal measures in order to protect the economy in our country. So in this moment, they created some aid package of approximately 130 million, ready to help the real sector. They're now preparing some second package, and in accordance with some projections, we will need definitely approximately 500 to 600 million to additionally to help the real sector. What we are also noticing that there is a great communication and trust between the government, between the real sector, between commercial bank sector, and between central bank. So also banks reacted very well. All banks in Montenegro, we have now moratorium for all loans. Who wants to apply? It's not the case like in Serbia, but it's very similar for the next 3 months. So the people who would like to delay the payments of their loan, they can just apply to their commercial bank, and this will be done with immediate effect. Also, the government did some fiscal measures especially for the industries who are locked down during this crisis, and they prepared the social and tax measure packages to help them. So for the industries who are closed during this period, these entrepreneurs and companies will not be obliged to pay 70% of the minimal salary to their employees, and all social and contributional tax they will be swept off as well. They're preparing in this second package more measures also for the industries who are not locked down during this process, but which are affected by this crisis. They prepared some package which will mean that 50% of minimal brute salary they will be not obliged to pay, also including these tax and contributions. Later on, I believe that we will speak much more concretely about separate industries in real estate, so we can get in touch what is happening in every sector, including retail, office, residential, and hotels.
Yes, that's an idea. Yes. Okay, Maho, please. We are positive that government and economy responses, and what is your opinion on that? Microphone, please.
Yeah, sorry. So I said federal government were not so quick to react, and they reacted with a type of corona law which wasn't accepted very well among the broader business community. So right now there are still negotiations of in order to make a functioning law which will help the most of affected businesses. On a cantonal level, on the other side, it is some more restricted measures they are planning, and there is also a huge, like say, the revolt or happiness among business leaders on local level that basically only the businesses that are strictly prohibited by law that are going to receive some help. On the other side, the 90% of economy is under lockdown, and the most of businesses are affected, and the most of business leaders are expecting this help. So, as in one hand, officials reacted very good, and the spread of disease was stopped in a good and effective manner. On the other side, economic measures were not at all on level that everybody expected. So on a state level, it is agreed with MMF for a 330 million euros help package, which should be a good help to form these measures now. But it's broad feeling that they just need to speed up the process and put this money outside to businesses, because more and more managers are just starting to lay off workers, and right now I think it's just in federations are something below 25,000 laid off workers. So it's situation is not good at all, and they just expect much more swift reaction. On the other side, they are also they are expecting to ease on restrictions after the first milestone from 4th May and go on, and people are really, as everywhere, keen to go back to their lives, and but I don't think we can expect any high degree of economic activity. So it's going to be in our sector probably much more hesitation on also on buyers, and still on seller side as well, because people are just waiting what's going to happen. And media, of course, as always, they are asking what's going to happen with prices, what's going to happen on this side, and basically no one can tell. But I believe we're going to touch upon these things later.
Thank you, Marco. Yes, that's for sure that we can't wait to soften these measures and to start our regular lives that we have used to. And as Sergeant mentioned earlier about our economic and government response, I would like to ask him, because we are familiar with the response, we are familiar with the softened measures, and does at this moment have banks gave their money to the clients actually, because we know that banks in these years are much more prepared than earlier in 2008. So are those government and economic responses started from the banks now to Serbia?
Yeah, Uroš, as I mentioned, started from Monday, this state guarantee scheme has came to life. So the banking sector, along with National Bank of Serbia and along with the Ministry of Finance, did finish these negotiations, I would say, in time to implement it in this time of easing the measurements. Whether it will be enough, whether it will be enough to loosen up things a little bit, we will have to see. As many of you mentioned, it's really a day-to-day analysis, a day-to-day keeping track on what's going on the markets. The consumer confidence level needs to be slightly broadened back to the levels that are enough for the normal economy going. So I believe that it's too early for any predictions how it will end up with these measures, whether there will be another one, whether there will be these restriction measurements in further period during the year. So there is a lot of unknown things, and for now it's only to see how how something will happen, so we can react. Because as we mentioned all earlier, this is something that we didn't encounter in early years. But what is, if I may say so, a luck in this whole situation is that the most of the economy industries in Serbia were on a stable momentum prior to emerging this pandemic. The banks are stable. The banking sector pretty much now are in a whole different situation than it was in 2008. So I believe that we just have to see how the things will go on with all these measurements, restrictions, which we are all dependent on.
Yes, while are we waiting to see what will happen and how that will affect us, we do see that something is happening with real estate market. Please help me out on this one. Which sectors are more influenced? Which will be the hardest hit? And is that the commercial real estate sector? We are familiar. I was reading a paper that said the hotels in Europe is like between 90 and 95% lower income that used to be. So please, we do have, all of us have a really good numbers in hotels, even the vacancies, even it was all over the region. Tourists were coming from year to year. We had a really bigger and bigger heights. So at this moment, Maya, what happened with the commercial real estate sector?
So basically, if you're going by the different segment of the real estate market, the hardest hit will for sure have the hotel industry and basically all leisure activities that are connected with the hotel industry. And this is not just in this year, but also in the years to come. We are seeing also the recommendations from the governments across Europe that this year we should avoid for sure the tourism as we know it. And if the borders will be open, I believe that tourism will be seeing, some kind of uplift only in case of the small private accommodations and in the camp industries. Whereas the hotel, as we know it, the industry will for sure suffer the most during this crisis. Now, the second segment that will have quite a lot of impact is for sure the retail, because also after the post-COVID crisis will come, the problem will still remain that for sure the shopping centers, as we knew them before, will, because of the social distancing still in our mindset, will have an impact on the shop density, the opening hours, for sure for the year 2020. The office market, the way it should work is also, for example, now we are having the largest working from home experiment, not only in Slovenia, but across the whole world. In my opinion, the impact on the office market will be short term, at least in Slovenia, because one thing is also important to know at what point of time and cycle the individual market was. In case of Slovenia, let's say the office market was still at the, let's say, expansion mode. Basically, we do not have any new pipeline, no new construction. If we're looking at Ljubljana being the biggest office market in Slovenia, so basically we're still recovering from 2008, 2009 crisis, so to say, that basically only this year we saw that the rental levels went up slightly because there's no new supply. The COVID will have for sure the impact on the demand on the smaller, let's say, or short-term scale, whereas I do not believe that the companies will implement working from home policy in such an extent as we have it now. The other segment that, despite the crisis will for sure have the most benefit is for sure the logistics. Not only because what we have realized now, but also because the trend in e-commerce is booming despite the crisis, and it was even before the COVID in accelerating growth. And in my opinion, the logistics will be the next new winner on the real estate market. The residential as such we will be seeing that in the next few months, the problem will be majority on lower demand, because the households will be basically securing the jobs and the livelihood, and we can see also the decline in mortgages and of course the decline in the transactions. The entire real estate market in the next months will be impacted by three different topics, or how to structure it is basically the decrease in the revenue, transaction delay, not only because of the investors being more cautious, but also because the entire court system is on hold and it's not operating, for example, in Slovenia. And the second hit will be the restrictions on the construction and development. What we are seeing now in Slovenia is that basically the banks are holding back the financing of the new projects. Of course, there's also the construction segment of the economy that will for sure have some impact, also because of the supply of the goods that is now hindered, and the restrictions in obtaining all of the permits for the development. So in my opinion, these are the three main impacts that we'll be seeing this year and probably also the next year. The impact on individual real estate segment, it then depends on how the governments will have the restrictions and when they will uplift them.
Thank you, Maya. Nevertheless, some of the real estate sectors are stable. Maybe some of them are even getting better hits, positive hits. Philip, what is happening in the real estate sector in Croatia? Microphone.
Sorry. Yes, thanks. Just to refer, I saw some comments on this webinar about the English language and why. Maybe it's worth mentioning that not all Slovenian can speak or understand well Croatian or Serbian, and also we have a public from which are not native speakers listening this panel, which I'm very happy to have them. So this is really, I think, a strong argument for having this on English. And now returning to your question, well, of course, hotels are unfortunately the biggest losers. It's not a question of the drop of the revenues. Majority of them are closed. I think it would be worth seeing what's happening in China with hotels, maybe to anticipate what will happen in our region. There we see occupancy levels picking up from 10, let's say, or below 10% in this crisis period to 30%, which is not high, but it's improving. And ADRs basically stayed on the similar levels. However, China has a very strong local domestic demand, while here we are really dependent on interstate travels, intercontinental travels also. So in this sense, I don't believe in quick and strong pickup of the hotel industry once the ban for the travel shuts down, because prior to that, there's not much of a discussion for the hotels. Probably the city hotels will pick up more quickly than resorts. There will be some businesses which will be rolling. People will travel for that purpose. There will be some tourist travels as well. And resorts had this seasonality problem in Croatia prior to this crisis. Nowadays, it will be even more tougher, because we don't know how people will be open to travel and expose themselves to a place where a lot of people are. For sure, hotels will face one challenge, primarily to organize themselves around the health issue, ensuring everything is clean, disinfected, probably not having big conferences. F&B sector there should be reorganized. So there will be lots of for example, also wellness and spa. It's really question how whether those services in hotels will be able to function in the way we used to see them in the past, or this will be something completely new. So yeah, lots of challenge in front of them. For the retail, which was a transforming sector prior to this crisis, this even exceeded now, and I think they will face lots of problems, challenges, investments from the landlords, and it will be question how. I'm quite sure good management will find a way to make them alive, but we do not know how the new normal will look like. If things get back to normal, probably prime properties will sustain and will perform further well, but maybe many of them will maybe transform something else, maybe in logistic property or something like that. So we'll see lots of change there as well. Office sector. Yeah, everyone is talking about this home office thing. We are all now witnessing. I really do not believe in major down use of office space and people start working from home more. We had this process prior to this crisis. And what it taught us that people miss this social distancing. This is why we have short-term offices where some usually freelancers or people who maybe IT experts who can maybe work from a different continent for their employees, for their company. They are looking for a place to be and place to work. Not just networking, it's also importance of the clear distinguishing the time for the work and time for leisure and for yourself. And basically, you do not want to have it in the same room. And the last thing, which I now learn with a kid, 2-year-old kid, it's really impossible to be effective. And when kids are above your head or know that you are closed behind the doors. So yeah, if I would be younger and living with my mom who makes lunch for me, and then this will probably function. Otherwise, home office, I don't believe in a revolution in that sense. Well, but for sure there will be some adaptation with the business sector, who will try to, because of lowering the costs, try to maybe put some employees from remote locations, if this will mean that they can still be effective and less burdening the cost side of the company. Yes, the transactions which were related to office, which was a really attractive property to acquire in a recent period, all stopped. Because for sure some fundamentals of those properties will be hurted. We will see where the rents will be after all this crisis. If companies start to default, we might see vacancy picking up. So yeah, it will be a tough time for them for sure. But I believe it's a short-term, let's say short to mid-term effect. On the long run, I still bet that office, which is also #1 investment type in real estate, will stay there. If not overcome with definitely the winner of this crisis, the logistics, which shown to be most resistant because of the effects of the coronavirus and shift to online shopping and retail. So this is the property where occupancies are picking up, if there are any. vacancy left to fill in. The rents are strong and probably will pick up further. Beside that, there is also substantial redirection of capital from institutional investors towards logistics, and also from other sectors which are now they are trying to leave. This not refers only to sectors, but also to emerging markets such as our region, where traditionally foreign investor will try to move out the money from. But I believe that they will try to stay in logistics and even develop it further. So we're left on our institutional investors, local ones, local private equity. So if their sentiment would be positive, I believe we will have some certain liquidity on the market.
Thank you, Philip. I totally agree, and I need to say that working from home has quickly become the new normal for millions all over the world of the workforce. But still, in Balkans, I need to say that I can't imagine myself working from home 24 hours to be home. And you know that our region, as we are socialized, that somehow during this period, I just realized that what my wife is saying, that it is much harder to be at home with 2 or 3 kids than to go on office and to work. So I totally agree. So let us stay how it was earlier before the Corona crisis. And now, Milovan, please, we do know that there are some great pipelines for resi, for offices in Montenegro, and from the other side, it is a great impact. And we do know that the non-native tourists were coming a lot in Montenegro. So what can you tell us about that, on that impact?
I'm very much in line what's being said by Maya and Philip. The situation in general in Montenegro is very, very similar. So the sectors which are hit the most in our country are definitely hospitality and tourism. Retail is obviously a sector which is hit because everything is locked down. So both sides, landlords and tenants, they will need to accept the damages that this crisis or this virus brought. Fortunately, we are noticing that on the market, both landlords and tenants, they accepted this situation rationally, and most of the landlords accepted to release the tenants of paying the rent for this upcoming period until the system will be again opened. On other side, the retailers, and through this help of the government, I believe that the total damage, short term, will not be will be big. After this opening process, which we strongly believe that will happen at the end of May, we still believe that some of the tenants will have some difficulties, mostly the tenants who had difficulties also in the past, especially with the liquidity and solvency, and landlords will need to support them also in some mid-term after that. In shopping centers, also the situation is similar. All landlords release the tenants of paying the rent, marketing, and some percentage of service charges. In office segment, we are noticing that there is not so many negative effects. Only we are small market, and you mentioned some pipeline. We have some pipeline, but this pipeline is pretty small. We are noticing that only few tenants who are affected directly with this situation ask for some reduction of rent. So in general, the market is pretty stable, and we believe that this will be the situation in a short term and midterm as well. Again, I'm stating that it's very important when the economy will be opened. So we strongly believe that this will be end of May, beginning of June. In residential, we are noticing a good equilibrium between supply and demand. So we are a touristical country, and we have to divide our market on a second home buyer market and domestic buyer market. In this second one, or the residential market for domestic buyers, we are noticing that now it's a one silent phase. The banks are open for financing the loans, but they're a little bit strict and sensitive because of this situation. So they have some, they added some more procedures to give the loan to the clients. On other side, what we are noticing is one psychological effect. The banks are not receiving they are not receiving so many requests. I would say that this percentage of requests is on a much lower level than it used to be a month or 2 months ago. So the population who were individuals who were planning to buy apartments, they put this investment on hold because of this situation, and this psychological effect will most probably last till this situation will be stabilized a little bit. I believe that this, in July, we can measure the effect of the crisis on real sector and on residential market for the domestic buyers. Related to the residential market for second home buyers, we recorded at the beginning of the year was even stronger than 2019. But because of this situation now, everything is definitely stopped, and in short term or even in medium term, also because of psychological effect, we are expecting big slowdown in this segment. Hotel industries, you mentioned, Uroš, that their revenues decreased for even 90%. I would say that their revenues decreased for 100%. If we are not including China, as Philip mentioned, China is something that we should look now, since their economy has been opened. Almost 100% hotels are open, and they're slowly recovering. We are noticing that these occupancy rates are not exceeding 30%. We are also noticing some good incentives and initiatives from hotel industry. So digitalization is going to prosper during this process, and it is showing how it's important. So we have hospitality bonds already. So, for example, if you buy some products, some specific destination who are offering that product for example, 100 euros, you will get the ticket for 200 euros when you decide to travel, when everything will be open. So that's how the hospitality industries are incentivized the future travelers to travel, because the reduction of average daily rate, this is a very sensitive issue. So they would, most of the hoteliers will proceed in that way with some incentives, gifts, etc., etc. This sector, as I said at the beginning of this call, will be hit very much in Montenegro as well. But we strongly believe that we will succeed to attract also some regional tourists, mostly during July and August, because we are a very small country. We cannot rely on domestic tourists. Domestic tourism is involved less than 5% in a total tourism in Montenegro. So definitely we will need to be creative, and we will need to bring on table some incentives which will incentivize and motivate people to come to us in the case if the border would be open. Industrial and logistic, this is not some interesting market in Montenegro, since we are small and this is not developed market. But in general, I think that industrial and logistics will recover fastest from this situation in Europe. So basically, this is it. Working from home. If you want me to give you sentences now, I can do it. If you want to do it later, you are a moderator. You just tell me.
Well, yeah, you can tell us now. Yeah. What do you think?
Yes. So we in Colliers, we did some very interesting research. Our department for working solution did a research of approximately 3,000 people participated in that research from more than 25 countries, and they came to some very interesting conclusions that almost 83% of the people who were interviewed, they expressed wish to work from home minimum 1 or 2 days per week. So we will see what will happen with office industry in the future. Some kind of transformation, I believe it will definitely happen. Digitalization is something that will also help to have influence for this change. And I believe that this can have some negative effect on the office industry worldwide. Definitely.
Thank you, Milovan. And Maho, please, as you're in Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of the greatest experts in residential part with 5 offices in Sarajevo and over. So please, is it so big impact, and you're dealing with offices as well? What can you tell us about the real estate sector over there?
Yeah, well, I can certainly agree with colleagues. Basically, as Bosnia is always kind of a mix of the region, so the same is also a situation in our industry, real estate sector. So if we start on hotel side, leisure side, we had also, like Montenegro, a great bunch of tourists was from China, South Korea, from Gulf countries, not to mention, and so besides of regional tourism, they were basically our main tourists here, and this is gonna definitely have a huge impact on this industry in months and probably year or more to come. So the key here would be, I believe, probably for the whole region, that domestic and also regional demand would be the key to save the industry in a way, and most probably the city travel will be least affected. And in Bosnia, we had the newly built resorts, which are definitely going to be affected, which are, most of them are on countrysides, and tourists from Gulf countries are coming and visiting them. So these are mostly private investments from Gulf countries as well. So they're going to be most affected. And very interesting that in hotel industry, we just a few days ago, we got the construction start of the first Hilton hotel here in Sarajevo. And it was like very interesting for everyone here, but it was timing that was unpredictable, and then when they got all the necessary permits, they just decided to continue it. It's a rather small hotel with 40 rooms and in the middle of the city on great location near just at the cathedral center, and they are going to start building now. So that's good. Also, the rest of construction is a bit of light point there. They haven't been prohibited. They continue to build. So basically all projects that were under construction, they're going to be finished now. And but what's going to happen with the pipeline? It's still, we're going to still see. And office side, and basically in all sectors in Bosnia in real estate, we were in a good, very good and large expansion. And now the most, I can just give some details. I talked several times with the owners, with landlords of the biggest office and mixed-use centers in Sarajevo, for example. And what they did, they basically lowered the rents 15 to 30% on office side, and on shopping side they are invoicing just 10% of it. And the most 90% of tenants are sent in office segment. They send their workers to work at home. And as you said, that's the new normal, but I wouldn't agree with term. I know it's term we use everywhere now. It's definitely not the normal. So the most of people would like to be able to work at office, but just as Milovan said, it's probably going to be some kind of a combination now that people are likely to use some days at the home and some days at the office, because Nordic countries, as they are in leading in these kind of experiments, they are basically saying the most effective weeks are those with 3 or 4 working days. So why not, as Milan said, we can expect that to have people working at the offices for maybe 3-4 days and 1 to 2 days at home. And I mentioned logistics definitely here. I think in Bosnia it was probably lagging from before in e-commerce, but now our people are really embracing e-commerce, and this is going to be new normal here, and the people are going to shop much more online, and this will have a nice impact on logistics center. And forget anything, so it would be basically for all report for all sectors. And we do expect as said on residential side that this leisure or cottages and this kind of objects going to be most, and also homes, family homes, which were not so popular in Bosnia from before due to unregulated market. Basically now it's going to be much more popular than apartments, or they're going to increase the popularity, because people are now seeing what's basically worth having a small parcel, small green area around own house, and that's going to definitely increase here.
Thank you. And Srđan, as you are a banking professional from one of the greatest banks in Serbia, please, we do know that the banks they do have a lot of assets covered. And what is the banking opinion and your opinion about the real estate impact?
Yeah, Oroš, as everybody else said, mostly I will agree towards the analysis of the segments in particular when it's real estate in mind. Prior to any analysis and prior to any prediction, really, you all have to take into account what Maya said previously, the property cycle that was at the momentum of this pandemic breach. So there's a starting point just to see what was going on the market prior to what happened later on. Afterwards, also you have to take into account all the economic measurements and all the economic trends that are going on and that will probably go on. And by now we cannot say in certainty what will happen in 3-month period, but and not maybe in a 1 year or more. So it's very unpredictable times and challenging times. And in my personal opinion, what's going on with the commercial market, as everybody here said, and what's going on in the world as well, those are the markets that are feeling this impact the most. Definitely hotel and leisure industry here in Serbia, as well as everybody elsewhere, is affected the most. Maybe, if I may say so, luckily Serbia was not so much dependent on on a typical touristic destination, but more as a conference touristic destination, more as a weekend destination. So those are also the key drivers and key aspects that has to be taken into account. We also see that rural tourism here in Serbia is nowadays going quite okay, because people are going from the cities to the countryside, escaping this whole situation here with the lockdowns in their apartments. So on the long term, I wouldn't say that tourism and hospitality and leisure sectors would be so much affected as soon as those restrictions of traveling and restrictions of physical distancing are lifted up. And I believe that people will again go back to travel and go back to enjoy as much as possible. Yeah. When it comes to retail, that's the sector that's affected the most, really. In this initial wave, we see all the closure of shops and retail malls and retail parks as well. So the investors and the owners are really just coping with rent collections, with negotiations of possible rent reductions, which in my opinion will come at last. What's now happening, it's negotiation on some initiatives in some fit out plans, service charges, options for the tenants, and just avoiding that rent reductions, which are everybody the most sensitive about. In longer term, and this is my bigger concern here in Serbia, on the long term of commercial industry, many of analysis that I've been reading nowadays are saying that this pandemic is the latest shock for the retail industry. Serbia was at the baby steps maybe when it comes to e-commerce, but I think, and I'm speaking in my name especially, we all got used to in these 2 months on e-commerce, and I believe that this will affect the retail market in the future period to come, especially when bearing in mind that prior to emerging this pandemic, retail was on its greatest challenges, being with shopping malls changing their concepts from shop and go concepts to experience concepts with food and beverages, taking more and more square meters of the retail centers. So they needed some new concept prior to this pandemic, and this, I believe, will only give the investors and owners even hardest task to do. When it comes to office prior to this pandemic, I need to say that Serbia was really stable with office market. We didn't have so much speculative office space in supply side, so we were really building, you know, in the way that demand was there. So the majority of projects, when it's office sector, we had like 30-40% of pre-lease contracts available. So we really had a clear picture of what's constructing. And what's most interesting also in Serbia, we have this new concept of, you know, redevelopment and refurbishing the old office spaces, which will continue, I believe, in even more pace after this pandemic is gone. So I don't believe that some new or extreme measures will affect this office space. But as you said, this home working concept is really affecting now the decisions of the companies. So whether we like it or not, it's one thing, but you know, the other thing is that for the companies will try to, you know, reduce their lease spaces. They will try to optimize their rents towards the landlords by optimizing the space, because they now see that the majority of their workers can work from home. So it will be a challenging for the investors, for the owners of office space. They will have to introduce some other concepts of you know, office working. We saw sustainable buildings, you know, 10-50 years ago. Then we were seeing smart buildings. I don't know, maybe at the period to come we will have to see some healthy and safety measurements that office spaces will need to introduce to attract occupants. And what's also interesting, that the flexible working spaces, open spaces, and you know, co-working will also be affected, yeah, the most by this pandemic, whether because of the high density of population in such spaces. When it comes to logistics in Serbia, we didn't have this sector as developed as it could be, and in the past 1 year the logistics sector in Serbia did see some new investments. And yeah, being country that is mostly reliable on industry and on the manufacture, I believe in the future period this industry will only continue to expand, and especially of the e-commerce, as everybody said. And in terms of residential market, I have to say that Serbia really never went along with the trends which were seen in other countries, or maybe in Western European countries. We saw in 2008 where all the prices went down in the first 1 or 2 years. We saw that newly constructed prices in Serbia went down just in 2012. So it was about 3 or 4 years that the prices were started to fall down. What we have seen in this sector in Serbia prior to this pandemic is really stable demand and you know, underlying supply. So you are coming from Novi Sad, and I believe Novi Sad leveled that demand and supply side in 2020, but Belgrade is still undersupplied, and Belgrade is you know, a generator of these market trends. So at the current position, at the current time, we don't see any price reductions of residential real estate. When we compare transacted prices from March and mid-April of 2020, when we compare them to the 2019, we see even 5% of increase. So it's not telling a whole story. Of course, those transactions are the one that were settled prior to this pandemic, and we will just have to see whether this trend is going on the other directions, in direction of lowering the prices. But what is the fact is that around 60%, we have around 60% lower transaction volume than it was the year before. So that's something that it's of course under huge pressure. The people, you know, who are selling and who are buying are still awaiting for what will happen. A lot of speculative informations are on the market that could affect this as well. So that's also what we try to avoid, and just to see how naturally market will look like once these, you know, physical distance restrictions are lifted up. So Serbian real estate market was never related mostly to the mortgages. So it was mostly cash buyers on the market. So we have to see whether that diaspora, the people from the region will continue to invest in real estate, or whether they will keep it on hold. So that's something that it's currently happening in the real estate industry here in Serbia.
Thank you, Sergeant. So we are all familiar, and we need to say that life will go on, and today is much better than 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we hope for 2 or 3 weeks is going to be much better and the restriction will be lower. So nevertheless, we can report that clients are expecting from valuers to be fortune tellers. This is a new time, and this is the topic that we will talk about on the next panel, about how hard it is now to do the evaluation and on real estate. And I'm not going to give you a closing word, guys, because you and I will continue next week, actually. So I need to say that Balkans, there is no need to worry. We are here. Experts from the region, Colliers International, KF Finance, Erste Bank, and Prostor Agency, and me as well from Data Investment. We will be here to save your money, and we will be here to give you all the right information about the real estate. So next panel for 7 days, we will talk with the banking professionals from the region, from collateral risk departments, and we will talk with the RICS and valuers from the Colliers, KF Finance, and other parts. So one more time, thank you very much, dear colleagues, for helping me on this panel, and special thanks to Sergeant, who actually gave us an idea to do that, because we were talking about the impact, and then we were like, why shouldn't we talk that in global? That because we are an expert, there is no one who knows better real estate than us in our countries. So that was the reason, an idea to talk, to be here. I'm sorry it was much more than 1 hour, but still we had so many things to say and so many things to share and to give to the audience. So thank you one more time, and see you for 7 days. Take care, guys.
Thanks to all. Bye bye.
Stay safe and stay home. Bye bye.
Bye.